Hello, everyone. It's Wisdom Wednesday, and I trust that your Wednesday is going just fine. Today, I want to talk to you on the topic perception versus perspective. Let's get right into it. Perception is said to be the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through your senses, or the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. Perception is what you interpret. It is your understanding of a given situation, person, or object. Perspective, on the other hand, is your point of view. It is the lens you see your point of view. It is the lens, you see the world through and determine how you view yourself, others, and everything else around you. Roberto Banlano quote, and he says, "People see what they want to see, and what people want to see never has anything to do with the truth." While Obiawen Kenabi says, "Look, you're going to find out that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view." We were all born as a blank slate, but socialization has helped to form our perception on almost every aspect of our lives. There's a saying which says, 7 brothers, 7 different minds. And we realize that even in our culture, we realize that people expect persons to look at life from the same angle as them, or have the same perception or perspective of life. We expect that if persons are socialized in the same manner or the same household, we are expecting that they will have the same perspective on any given situation, on life in general. But I want you to understand that this is not so. Each individual has been given the right to have their own perspective, their own perception, because perception is how one interprets life, situations, and perspective is your own point of view. And we realize that today, most of the times we have conflicts with individuals because we share different perception or different perspective. Becoming a mother, I realized more that I have been given the opportunity to impart knowledge and to nurture my daughter into becoming a well-standing citizen. I have been given the opportunity to help her to form her perception of life and of society. But I also have to understand that she will have her own perception and perspective of life. Right now, in this age, we have parents who are having conflict with their children because they expect that the child will see things from their perception or perspective. We have conflict at work, at church, because of the same factor. Talking with my mom on a daily basis, I realize that we share similar perception, and in turn, we share similar perspective on various issues. However, looking talking with my other siblings, I realized that even though we were socialized in the same family, we share different perspective and different perception on life, and this is quite fine and okay. Right now, as I said to you before, there are persons who want to force persons to see things the way they see things. And hence persons are at each other or experiencing turmoil or conflicts. So today I want to encourage you to understand, or to remind you rather, that each individual has their own perception and own perspective of life, or will have their own perspective of life. And when interacting with each other, we must understand this. We must be able to accept persons for who they are and for what they are or what they bring. Even right now in Christendom, when we look, I have been a youth leader for quite some time, and I have been dealing with youths throughout my lifetime. And I have realized that perspective and perception is something that persons don't take into consideration. Or, as I said before, in our culture, we're old school, and we think, especially for adults, we think that if you are older than an individual or you're more mature than an individual, it means that you are always right and the younger person is always wrong, which is not so. And hence, even in the church today, we have conflicts. And I will talk about the church because that's where I belong. I am the church, and I know that most of my audience, or some of my audience, are church people, and we would have experienced this. And reflecting and trying to understand, I realize that in time past, in generations before now, we understand that persons who would have been the leaders in our churches would have been the ones who were learned. They were the ones who could read and write, and they would read the scriptures and they would interpret it to the congregation. When they read the scriptures based on their perspective, they will develop a perspective or their own perception of what this means. This was fine like 70 years ago, 50 years ago. But in this time and in this era, where information is at our fingertips, we realize that things have changed, and this generation is able to read and to decode and to interpret and to be able to have their own perception and perspective of things. So you will find that in this generation, we have young people who will pose a particular question. And as I mentioned before, the older generation thinks that it is rude for a young person to question a rule or question question a rule or question a principle or anything of that sort. And it is disrespectful or it is rude for a younger person to question something that an older person have said. But I think it's because we are not at the level, or we are not at the place where we understand that each individual is expected. It is their right to have a perception and a perspective for themselves. And we find now, even in church, as I said, I have to talk about church, where if a younger person asks something, then the older persons might get upset and think that something is wrong. And for this generation, they want it to be proven to them. So if you say that this is so, prove it to me. And if it is that you can prove it to me, then fine. Once I see it, I'll believe it. But as I said, in generation past, it would have been persons who lead, who would have been learned and were able to read and to, I guess, impart their knowledge and give persons an interpretation based on their perception. So even in families now, I have seen or I know that there are persons who are having serious conflicts in their families because of them not understanding that each individual, even if it is your child, they will have their own perspective and perception of life. So today, I hope that this talk has shed some light and have reminded us to have an open mind. And wherever we are, wherever we meet, wherever we have to interact with people, we will have that mindset and understand that people are given the rights to have their own perception and their own perspective. And sometimes people believe or they think that because you were grown in the same environment or you were given the same socialization, then you should see things the same. There's this phrase that says 7 brothers, 7 different minds. And it is true. It is true that not because the individuals were raised in the same environment, meaning that they're going to interpret or see life the same way. They will have their own perspective and perception. So it is okay for each individual to have their own perception and perspective. And I trust and hope that this has brought some light to you today on Wisdom Wednesday. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.